At 0512 on the morning of March 6, 1944, Captain Nathaniel Wardle tightens the leather chin strap of his flight helmet and places one hand on the canopy rail of his P-51B Mustang. The metal is cold. England in early March is always cold. Behind him, the airfield at Royal Air Force Debden is alive with sound. 4-engine bombers warming up to the west. 200 B-17 flying fortresses, their propellers churning the pre-dawn darkness into a continuous roar that vibrates through the frozen ground. Wardell climbs into the cockpit. The seat fits him now after 3 months. The instrument panel glows faintly green in the darkness. Fuel gauges, oil pressure, coolant temperature, manifold pressure, tachometer, altimeter, artificial horizon. Each dial tells a story. Each number is a variable in an equation he has been solving since December. Today's target is Berlin. Not a symbolic raid, not a demonstration, a penetration mission deep into the heart of German airspace, 1,150 miles round trip. Further than any American fighter has ever escorted bombers. Further than most people believe is possible. The mission exists because of this aircraft. Wardell's Mustang carries 2 external 75-gallon drop tanks mounted beneath the wings. Together with internal fuel, total capacity is 489 gallons. At cruise settings, fuel consumption runs 65 gallons per hour. The mathematics are simple. 7.5 hours of endurance, range beyond 1,600 miles. But mathematics on paper and mathematics at 25,000 feet over enemy territory are different equations entirely. Fully fueled, the aircraft weighs 9,200 pounds, more than a Ford sedan. Yet the Packard-built Merlin engine will pull it skyward at over 3,000 feet per minute. This combination of range and performance is new to the air war, revolutionary, unprecedented. The P-51 Mustang was not supposed to be here. 4 years earlier, when North American aviation first designed the aircraft, it was meant as something else entirely. A fast, low-altitude tactical fighter, a ground attack platform, a reconnaissance aircraft. The prototype flew in October 1940. Clean lines, laminar flow wing, efficient cooling system. On paper, the aerodynamics were exceptional. In practice, the engine betrayed the airframe. The Allison 5-1710 power plant performed beautifully below 15,000 feet. Smooth, powerful, reliable. But above that altitude, performance collapsed. The engine lost power rapidly. Manifold pressure dropped. Climb rate deteriorated. At 25,000 feet, where bomber formations cruised and enemy fighters intercepted, the early Mustang was useless. Those aircraft flew ground attack missions, strafing runs, photo reconnaissance, low-level work where the Allison's strengths mattered and its weaknesses didn't kill you. They were not bomber escorts. They could not reach the altitudes where the war was being lost. Wardell knew this personally. Through the summer and fall of 1943, he flew P-47D Thunderbolts. Republic Aviation's fighter was a beast, massive, heavy, armed with 850 caliber machine guns and capable of absorbing tremendous battle damage. The radial engine was air-cooled, nearly indestructible. But the Thunderbolt had limitations: maximum combat radius with external tanks, 475 miles, enough to escort bombers to the German border, not enough to stay with them over the targets, not enough to protect them when they needed protection most. Standard procedure was predictable. Escort fighters would accompany the bomber stream to the edge of their range, then they would turn back. Fuel state critical, mission parameters absolute, and the bombers would continue alone. The Luftwaffe knew this. German radar operators tracked the formations. Fighter controllers watched the escort withdrawal. Then the attacks began. Messerschmitt, Bf 109S and Focke-Wulf 190S climbed from bases across Germany and fell on the unprotected bomber streams like wolves. The losses were catastrophic. On August 17, 1943, the 8th Air Force sent 376 bombers to Schweinfurt and Regensburg. 60 were shot down, 600 men killed or captured. Another 100 aircraft returned damaged beyond repair. October 14th was worse. 291 bombers to Schweinfurt again, 60 destroyed. Another 17 so badly damaged they never flew again. More than 600 airmen lost in a single afternoon. The crews called it Black Thursday. Wardle was in the air that day. He escorted the formation to the German border. He watched the bombers continue east without him. He listened to the radio calls grow frantic. Fighters inbound, engines on fire, bail out, mayday. He turned back with fuel to spare and ammunition unexpended because the mathematics of range are absolute and unforgiving. He landed at Debden with 20 minutes of fuel remaining. The bombers he was supposed to protect didn't come back. That is the equation you cannot solve with courage. That is the problem you cannot fix with training or tactics or determination. You can fly perfectly, you can fight brilliantly, you can be willing to die, but if the fuel runs out, you fall from the sky. Distance is not negotiable. The solution came from an unexpected direction. In December 1942, Royal Air Force test pilots at the Aeroplane and Armament Experimental Establishment took a standard North American P-51 Mustang and removed its Allison engine. In its place, they installed a Rolls-Royce Merlin 61. The Merlin was a legend. It powered the Supermarine Spitfire. It had won the Battle of Britain, British engineering at its finest. 12 cylinders, liquid-cooled, and critically equipped with a 2-stage, 2-speed supercharger. That supercharger changed everything. The supercharger compressed intake air, forcing more oxygen into the cylinders. More oxygen meant more fuel could burn. More fuel burning meant more power. The first stage operated at low altitude. The second stage engaged higher up, maintaining manifold pressure when normally it would collapse. The result was an engine that delivered full power from sea level to 30,000 feet. When mated to the Mustang's efficient airframe, the transformation was total. Maximum speed climbed to over 440 miles per hour at altitude. Service ceiling exceeded 41,000 feet. Fuel consumption at cruise settings was miserly. The aircraft could fly for hours. For the first time, American bombers could have an escort that stayed with them from England to Germany and back. The British offered the design to the Americans. There was skepticism. An American airframe with a British engine felt wrong to some. National pride, industrial rivalry, the usual politics, but the mathematics were undeniable. Packard Motor Car Company was licensed to build the Merlin in the United States, designated the V16503. Production began in summer 1943. By November, the first P-51B Mustangs with Packard Merlins were arriving at fighter bases in England. Wardle was assigned to transition from the P-47 to the P-51 in late November. He approached the aircraft with professional skepticism. The differences were immediately apparent. The P-47 was a tank, radial engine in front like a shield, armor plate behind the seat, rugged landing gear. If you got hit, you had a chance. The Thunderbolt could absorb punishment that would destroy other fighters and still bring you home. The Mustang was elegant, sleek. The inline Merlin engine created a narrow frontal profile. The laminar flow wing was thin and razor-sharp. The entire aircraft looked fast, sitting still. But elegant meant fragile. The cooling system ran coolant through a ventral radiator under the fuselage. A single bullet through the glycol lines meant engine failure within minutes. There was no backup, no redundancy. You took a hit in the cooling system, you were a glider, looking for a place to crash. The wing was unforgiving. The laminar flow design reduced drag at high speed, but made low-speed handling treacherous. Stalls were abrupt, no warning buffet, no gentle mush. The wing simply stopped flying, and the nose dropped like a stone. Takeoffs and landings required precision. Wardell spent the first week learning to respect the aircraft's limits. He flew practice missions, short hops at first, learning the engine management. The Merlin required attention, manifold pressure, RPM, mixture, coolant temperature, oil temperature. The pilot managed a dozen variables constantly. Let anyone drift too far and the engine would destroy itself, but once you learned the discipline, the aircraft rewarded you. Wardell's first high-altitude flight was a revelation. He climbed to 25,000 feet, the altitude where the Thunderbolt labored and the early Mustangs gasped for air. The Merlin purred, smooth, strong. The manifold pressure gauge held steady. The aircraft accelerated cleanly past 400 miles per hour. He pushed higher. 30,000 feet. The engine didn't falter. 35,000. Still pulling. At 40,000 feet, the controls grew mushy in the thin air, but the engine ran perfectly. He descended and flew straight and level at cruise power. 265 miles per hour indicated. Fuel flow steady at 65 gallons per hour. He flew for 3 hours without maneuvering. When he landed, the fuel gauges showed 30% remaining. The next day, he calculated range with external drop tanks. Internal fuel, 269 gallons, 2 drop tanks, 150 gallons, total 419 gallons. At 65 gallons per hour, that gave 6.4 hours endurance. At cruise speed, range exceeded 1,600 miles. London to Berlin was 575 miles one way, 1,150 miles round trip. For the first time, the equation balanced. Major Harrison Vance called a briefing in early February. The pilots of the 357th Fighter Group assembled in the operations room. Vance was 42 years old, a veteran of the North Africa campaign, steady, professional, not given to dramatics. He stood in front of a map of Europe. March 6th, he said. Berlin. The room went silent. First daylight fighter escort all the way to target and return. B-17S from the 1st and 3rd Bombardment Divisions. Over 600 bombers. We provide top cover from Debden to Berlin and back. When he let that sink in. The P-51B gives us the range, but range means nothing if we don't execute perfectly. Fuel management will be critical. Combat will burn fuel faster than cruise. Every engagement costs you endurance. Every minute of high power settings reduces your margin. Vance looked at each pilot in turn. You will make decisions over Germany that determine whether you come home. There will be no rescue, no bailout over friendly territory. You run out of fuel over the Reich, you are captured or dead. He paused. But if we succeed, we change the war. The bomber crews have been dying because we couldn't stay with them. That ends March 6th. If we can prove the P-51 can do this, every mission after will have full escort. The Luftwaffe will have to fight us everywhere, and we will grind them down. Wardell understood. This was not a single mission. This was a proof of concept. The entire strategic bombing campaign depended on sustainable bomber losses. Without escort, losses ran 20 to 25% on deep penetration missions. Those numbers were unsustainable. The bomber offensive would have to stop. With full escort, losses could drop below 5%. The war could be won from the air, but only if the P-51 could do what the engineers promised. Wardell spent the next 3 weeks preparing. He flew practice missions every day, weather permitted, building endurance, learning to manage fatigue. 10-hour flights were mentally and physically exhausting. Oxygen mask clamped to your face, constant vibration, sub-zero temperatures, the cramped cockpit. He practiced fuel management until it became instinct. He memorized the fuel consumption charts, cruise settings, combat settings, climb settings. He calculated range with different combat durations. 5 minutes of combat, 10 minutes, 15. Each minute at high power reduced total range by miles. He studied emergency procedures, engine failure, coolant loss, oil pressure loss, fuel system malfunction, oxygen failure. Every system had failure modes. Every failure mode had a procedure. Some could be managed, some were fatal. Coolant loss was the worst. The Merlin would overheat in less than 10 minutes. You could reduce power, lean the mixture, try to stretch it, but eventually the cylinder heads would warp. The engine would seize, the propeller would stop. Then you were a glider. Over Germany, that meant you were done. Wardell forced himself to think through the scenarios. Where would he be when the engine quit? How much altitude? Could he reach Allied territory? Could he reach the coast? The answers were usually no. So the solution was simple. Don't get hit. Don't take unnecessary risks. Don't chase kills into the weeds. Don't fixate on a single target. Stay aware, stay defensive. The mission was escort, not glory, not kills. If every bomber came home and no P-51 shot down a single enemy fighter, the mission was a success. That was the mental discipline required. The night of March 5th, Wardell walked the flight line alone. The P-51Bs sat in neat rows, dark shapes against the darker sky. Ground crews were finishing final preparations. Fuel tanks topped off, ammunition loaded, oxygen bottles charged. Wardell found his aircraft. Tail number 4, 3287. He ran his hand along the leading edge of the wing. The metal was cold and smooth. The laminar flow surface was perfectly flush. No rivets, no protrusions, just clean aerodynamic efficiency. He walked around the aircraft, checking, inspecting, not because he didn't trust the crew chief, but because this was ritual, this was control. He checked the drop tanks, both secure, feed lines connected, fuel quantity verified. 489 gallons total. He checked the guns, 6 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, 3 in each wing, 270 rounds per gun, 1,620 rounds total. At standard firing rates, that was approximately 20 seconds of continuous fire. No pilot wasted ammunition. Controlled bursts, 2 to 3 seconds maximum. Aim, fire, assess, re-engage or break off. He checked the control surfaces. Ailerons free and correct. Elevators free and correct. Rudder free and correct. Trim tabs set for takeoff. He checked the landing gear. Tires inflated. Struts extended. No hydraulic leaks. He checked the propeller. Blades clean. No nicks. No damage. Spinner secure. Everything was perfect. The crew chief approached. Technical Sergeant Browning, 50 years old, 30 years in aviation. He knew more about the Merlin engine than the Packard engineers. "She's ready, Captain," Wardell nodded. "Fuel? 489 gallons verified. Drop tanks are full and feeding correctly. Engine? Fresh oil change, coolant system pressure checked. All temps normal on ground run this afternoon. She's running clean. Guns? Bore sighted yesterday. Harmonized at 300 yards, 1620 rounds loaded." Wardell looked at the aircraft one more time. "Thank you, Sergeant." Browning hesitated. "Sir, bring her back." Wardell met his eyes. "That's the plan." He walked back to the barracks. Tomorrow would begin at 04:30, 4.5 hours from now. He needed sleep, but sleep didn't come easily. He lay in the darkness and ran through the mission profile again. Takeoff 0512, rendezvous with bombers at 7,000 feet over the North Sea, climb to 25,000 feet, cross the enemy coast at 0740, Berlin at approximately 0945, combat over target area, return leg, strafe targets of opportunity if fuel permitted, coast out around 1300 hours, land Debden by 1500, 10 hours gate to gate, the longest fighter mission ever attempted. The mathematics were tight, fuel margins were thin, combat would burn reserves quickly, headwinds would eat into range. Any deviation from plan could be fatal, but the mission was necessary. Wardell thought about the bomber crews, 10 men per B-17, 600 bombers meant 6,000 men. Those men were counting on the fighters to stay with them, to protect them, to keep the Luftwaffe off their backs long enough to drop their bombs and turned for home. For 2 years, the fighters had failed them, not through lack of courage, not through lack of skill, through lack of range. Tomorrow, that changed. Tomorrow, the P-51 Mustang would prove that engineering could bend the laws of fuel consumption and aerodynamics just far enough to make the impossible routine. Tomorrow, American fighters would reach Berlin, and if Wardell and his fellow pilots did their jobs correctly, they would come home. He closed his eyes. The Merlin engine's sound was already in his head. The smooth 12-cylinder hum. The sound of power and precision. The sound that would carry him across Germany and back. 4 hours until wake-up. 4.5 hours until engine start. The mission that would change the air war was 9 hours away. Wardell forced himself to breathe slowly, to quiet his mind, to find rest. Outside, the wind moved across the airfield. The bombers were silent now, waiting. Everything was waiting. For dawn, for Berlin, for proof. At 0430, the alarm clock shatters the darkness. Wardell doesn't remember falling asleep. He remembers staring at the ceiling, running fuel calculations. Now someone is shaking his shoulder, and there is light coming through the window. He dresses in the cold. Long underwear, wool shirt, wool trousers, leather flight jacket. The jacket is heavy, lined with sheep's wool. It will be necessary. At 25,000 feet, the outside air temperature will be 40 degrees below zero. The mess hall serves breakfast, powdered eggs, toast, coffee. Wardell eats mechanically. The food is fuel, nothing more. Around him, other pilots eat in silence. 16 men from the 357th Fighter Group. Some are veterans with 20 missions. Some are on their 3rd combat flight. All of them understand what today means. Major Vance enters at 0500. Weather is acceptable, ceiling 10,000 feet over the channel, clear over the continent. Winds aloft at altitude are 15 knots from the west. That's headwinds outbound, tailwinds home. Headwinds meant higher fuel consumption. Wardell mentally adjusted his calculations. 15 knots wasn't catastrophic, but it reduced margin. Bombers are launching now. We take off 0512. Rendezvous point is 51 degrees north, 2 degrees east at 7,000 feet. We'll climb with them to 25,000 and maintain escort formation all the way to IP initial point, the beginning of the bomb run over Berlin. After bombs away, we're cleared for free hunt, airfield attacks, ground targets, fighter sweeps. But watch your fuel state. No heroics if it means you don't come home. Vance looked at each man. This is the mission we've been training for. Fly smart, fly disciplined, bring each other home. He paused. Gentlemen, start engines at 0510. The walk to the flight line is 200 yards. Wardell's boots crunch on frost. His breath forms clouds in the pre-dawn darkness. To the west, the sound of bomber engines is building. Hundreds of them, a continuous thunder. His P-51B sits exactly where he left it. Sergeant Browning is waiting. Pre-flight completed 30 minutes ago, sir. She's ready. Wardell nods. He walks around the aircraft anyway. Control surfaces, landing gear, propeller, drop tanks. Everything is perfect. He climbs the wing route, steps into the cockpit. The seat is familiar now. He straps in. Shoulder harness, lap belt, parachute risers. The straps pull tight across his chest. The instrument panel waits. Dark, silent. Wardell begins the checklist from memory. Battery switch on. The instruments illuminate. Pale green light. Fuel quantity gauges, both main tanks full. Drop tank indicators show full. Total fuel, 489 gallons. Throttle, closed. Mixture, idle cutoff. Propeller control, full increase. Supercharger, automatic. Carburetor air, cold. He checks the clock. 0508. 2 minutes. Around him, other pilots are climbing into cockpits. Ground crews are pulling wheel chocks. Fire extinguishers stand ready. 0510. Vance's voice crackles over the radio. 357, start engines. Wardell reaches for the starter. Battery on. Fuel boost pump on. Mixture rich. Throttle cracked 1 inch. He presses the starter button. The Bendix inertia starter engages, a high-pitched whine building in frequency. The flywheel spins faster, faster. When it reaches maximum RPM, Wardell pulls the engage lever. The flywheel couples to the engine. The propeller begins to turn. Slowly at first. 1 blade, 2 blades, 3. Then the first cylinder fires. The Packard Merlin 516503 comes alive. 12 cylinders firing in sequence. The aircraft trembles. White smoke puffs from the exhaust stacks. The tachometer needle swings up. 800 RPM, 1000, 1200. Wardell advances the mixture. The engine smooths. 1500 RPM. Oil pressure rising. 40 psi. 50, 60. He scans the gauges. Oil temperature climbing. Coolant temperature climbing. Manifold pressure steady. Everything normal. The engine settles into a steady idle. The sound is a deep, powerful hum. Not the harsh bark of a radial engine. The Merlin purrs. Wardell allows himself 1 moment to listen. This engine will run for the next 10 hours. It will burn 480 gallons of fuel. It will turn the propeller 12 million times. It will take him to Berlin and bring him home if it doesn't fail. He keys the radio. Blue flight, engine start complete, standing by. 1 by 1, the other aircraft report in. 16 Merlins running, 16 pilots ready. 0512, Vance, 357, taxi for takeoff. The P-51 rolls forward. The tail wheel follows obediently. Wardell uses rudder pedals and differential braking to steer. The aircraft is heavy, 9,200 pounds with full fuel and ammunition. He taxis slowly, testing brakes, checking control response. The ailerons move freely, the elevator moves freely. The rudder moves freely. At the runway threshold, he stops. Final checks. Magnetos, check both. Left mag, right mag. RPM drop, less than 50 on each. Normal. Propeller, cycle to full decrease, then back to full increase. RPM drops, then climbs. Normal. Flight controls, full deflection, all axes. Normal. Trim, set for takeoff. Elevator trim, slightly nose up. Rudder trim neutral, fuel selector on main tank, boost pump on. He looks down the runway. 3,500 feet of concrete stretching into darkness. Enough length, barely. The tower. Blue leader cleared for takeoff, wind calm. Wardell releases the brakes, advances the throttle. The Merlin responds immediately. The aircraft rolls forward. Slowly at first. The tail wheel still on the ground. 40 miles per hour. 50. The tail comes up. The propeller levels. Forward visibility improves. 60 miles per hour. 70. The airspeed indicator needle climbs steadily. 80. 90. 100. The aircraft is heavy. The runway is rough. Every imperfection transmits through the landing gear. The wings begin to generate lift. The weight comes off the wheels. 110, 115, 120. Wardell eases back on the stick. The nose rises. The main wheels leave the ground. The rumbling stops. The aircraft is flying. He holds the nose steady. Airspeed building. 130, 140. He reaches for the gear handle, pulls. The landing gear retracts with a hydraulic whine. The drag decreases. The aircraft accelerates, 160 miles per hour. He begins a gentle climbing turn to the right, heading 090, due east. Behind him, 15 more Mustangs lift off at 30-second intervals. The mission has begun. At 7,000 feet over the North Sea, Wardell levels off and throttles back. cruise power, manifold pressure, 46 inches, RPM 2700. The engine settles into its working rhythm. The instrument panel tells him everything he needs to know. Airspeed 265 miles per hour indicated. True airspeed at this altitude is 290. Fuel flow 65 gallons per hour. Oil temperature and coolant temperature both in the green. The sun is rising behind him, orange light spreading across the eastern horizon. Below, the North Sea is dark grey, whitecaps visible in the early morning light. Ahead, the bomber stream appears. At first, just dark specks against the lighter sky. Then the specks resolve into shapes, B-17, flying fortresses, dozens of them, climbing in loose formation. Their contrails streak the sky. Wardell keys the radio. "Big friend leader, this is Blue Leader. 16 little friends at your 6 o'clock, 7,000 feet. The reply comes immediately. "Blue Leader, Big Friend Leader, good morning. Mighty glad to see you boys. We're staying all the way today." A pause, then, "Say again, Blue Leader?" "All the way to target and return. We've got the range now." Another pause. Longer. "Blue Leader, that's the best damn news we've heard in 2 years. Wardell smiles inside his oxygen mask. He knows what this means to the bomber crews. For 2 years they have watched the escorts turn back. They have continued alone into Germany. They have died alone, not today. The formation climbs together. The B-17S are heavy with fuel and bombs. Their rate of climb is slow, 800 feet per minute. The Mustangs circle lazily above them, maintaining position. At 25,000 feet, the formation levels. The bombers settle into cruise, 170 miles per hour. The Mustangs throttle back and weave gently. S turns to avoid overtaking the slower bombers. Wardell checks his position. Altitude 25,000 feet, heading 105, airspeed holding steady. Time 0640. He glances at the fuel gauges. Main tanks reading 95%. Drop tanks feeding normally. Total fuel used 29 gallons in 90 minutes. The numbers match perfectly. He scans the sky. Clear above, clear to both sides. Below, a solid undercast of clouds. Visibility unlimited. This is the part people don't understand. Combat flying is 95% tedium. Straight and level flight, constant scanning, monitoring instruments. The other 5% is violence. Wardell settles into the routine. Scan, check instruments, scan, check fuel, scan, check formation position. His hands rest lightly on the controls. The Mustang flies itself at cruise. Trimmed correctly, the aircraft is stable. He could let go entirely, and it would maintain heading and altitude, but he doesn't. You never stop flying, not for a second. The minutes pass. 0700, 0715. Then the radio crackles. "Blue Leader, this is Blue 3, contrails high, 1 o'clock, Angels 32. Wardell looks. There, 4 white contrails, aircraft at 32,000 feet. Heading converging. Blue Leader copies. All blue flight, maintain position. Blue 3 and 4, climb and identify. 2 Mustangs break formation. Their Merlins roar as throttles advance. They climb steeply, 30,000 feet, 31,000, 32. Wardell watches. The unknown aircraft are turning, coming around. Blue 3, Leader, I have visual 4 BF-109s, Geschwader formation. They're setting up for a bounce. Messerschmitt 109s, Luftwaffe fighters. This far out, they weren't expected. German fighters usually waited until the escorts turn back, but the Germans have adapted. They know something is different today. Blue flight, prepare to engage. Protect the bombers. Wardell advances his throttle. Manifold pressure climbs to 54 inches. The Merlin's note deepens. The aircraft accelerates 280 miles per hour, 300, 320. The 109s are diving now, coming down from altitude in a slashing attack. They're aiming for the bombers. Wardell pulls back on the stick. The nose rises, the artificial horizon tilts. He's climbing to intercept. His altitude, 27,000 feet. The 109's 28,000 and dropping fast. This is not how he wanted to start the mission, but the bombers must be protected. That is the mission. The geometry of the intercept develops quickly. The 109's are diving at over 400 miles per hour. Wardell is climbing at 300. Closure rate, 700 miles per hour. 10 seconds to merge. Wardell selects guns, the master arm switch, the firing button under his thumb. 5 seconds. He can see the lead 109 clearly now. Dark grey camouflage. Black crosses on the wings, nose coming down. The pilot is aiming at the B-17 formation below. Wardell pulls lead. The gun sight pipper swings ahead of the 109's flight path. Deflection shooting. Aim where the target will be, not where it is. 2 seconds. He squeezes the trigger. The aircraft shudders as all 650 caliber Browning machine guns fire. The sound is a continuous hammering roar. Spent brass casings tumble past the canopy. 80 rounds per second pouring into the sky. 3-second burst. 240 rounds expended. The tracer stream arcs toward the 109. Some rounds miss, but some connect. Wardell sees strikes on the left-wing route. Metal tears, fuel ignites, the 109 snaps into a roll, fire trails from the wing, the aircraft inverts and dives, out of control. Wardell doesn't watch, he's already looking for the next target. The remaining 3 109's have scattered. They didn't expect resistance this far from the German border. They didn't expect Mustangs to be here. 1109 tries to climb back to altitude. Bad decision. The Merlin supercharger gives Wardell the advantage in a climbing fight. He pulls up behind the German. 300 yards. Range closing. The 109 pilot sees him. Brakes hard left. A good defensive move, but the Mustang turns with him. Wardell keeps the pressure on, not trying to force a shot, just staying in position, making the German work, making him burn fuel, making him bleed energy. The turning fight continues for 90 seconds, each pilot trying to gain advantage. But Wardell is patient. The laminar flow wing lets him maintain speed in the turn. The 109 is slowing. The German makes a mistake. He tries to reverse the turn, rolling hard right. For 1 second, the 109 is wings level. Exposed, Wardell fires. 1 second burst, 80 rounds. Hits along the fuselage. The canopy shatters. The 109's nose drops. Wardell breaks off, scans the sky. The other 2 109's are gone, retreating east. The engagement is over. Total time, 4 minutes. Wardell throttles back. His hands are shaking slightly. Adrenaline, he forces them steady. Quick fuel check. Main tanks, 88%. Drop tanks, 70%. Total, 426 gallons remaining. He's burned extra fuel in combat, but the margin is still acceptable. He keys the radio. Blue flight, reform on the bombers. The Mustangs slide back into position. The B-17 formation continues east. Unharmed, the German attack was broken before it reached them. That is victory. Not the 2 109's destroyed. The bombers still flying. Wardell settles back into cruise, but something has changed. The Germans know the Mustangs are here. They know the escorts aren't turning back. The word will spread. New tactics will be deployed. This is just the beginning. At 0830, the formation crosses the German border. Below, the clouds have broken. Wardell can see the ground. Towns, rivers, roads, enemy territory. The bomber stream stretches for miles. Over 200 B-17S in staggered formations. Each box of aircraft at slightly different altitudes. Layers of bombers filling the sky. Around them, the Mustangs weave. 16 fighters trying to cover 200 bombers. The mathematics are impossible. But the Mustangs are not trying to protect every bomber. They are trying to prevent organized attacks, to break up formations of enemy fighters before they can coordinate. presence is deterrence. The minutes pass. 0845, 0900. Wardell runs another calculation. Time airborne, 3 hours, 48 minutes. Distance covered, approximately 650 miles. Distance to Berlin, 120 miles. Fuel state, 390 gallons. Consumption so far matches the plan, but combat burned extra. Every engagement costs endurance. The numbers are tight, but manageable. He scans the sky, searching for threats. The bomber crew's radio occasional chatter, nervous jokes, position checks. At 0915, the radio erupts. Bandits! Hi, 12 o'clock. Wardell looks up. There. Contrails, many of them, 20 or more, BF-109s and FW-190s, a major attack forming. The Luftwaffe is committing everything they have. This is what the German fighters have been waiting for, the moment when the escorts should turn back, when fuel state should force the Americans to withdraw. But the Mustangs are not withdrawing. The German formation falters. Confusion. The Americans are still here, this far into Germany. Wardell smiles coldly. Surprise is a weapon. Blue flight, engage. Keep them off the bombers. The Mustangs climb, throttles forward, manifold pressure to war emergency power, 67 inches. The Merlins roar. The German fighters come down. A massive furball develops. Aircraft everywhere, turning, diving, climbing. Wardell stays high. Discipline. He does not chase individual targets. He watches the bomber formation. Any German fighter that commits to attack the B-17S, he intercepts. A FW-190 rolls in from above, diving toward the lead bomber box. Wardell turns hard. 6G turn. The G-suit inflates around his legs, restricting blood flow, keeping him conscious. He pulls lead on the 190, fires, misses. The 190 is fast in the dive. But the German breaks off the attack. He's seen the Mustang. He's no longer committed. That is victory enough. The fight continues for 10 minutes. Swirling chaos. Other Mustang pilots call out kills. 2 109s down, 1190, smoking. But the bomber formation is intact. The German attack is broken. Finally, the enemy fighters break off, diving away. Withdrawing, Wardell reforms Blue flight. All 4 aircraft accounted for, some damage. Blue 2 took hits in the tail, but still flying. His fuel gauge is red, main tanks 72%. Drop tanks empty and jettisoned during combat. Total fuel remaining 320 gallons. Time airborne 4 hours 5 minutes. Time over target now. Berlin appears ahead, a massive city sprawling across the landscape. Rivers, lakes, industrial complexes, rail yards, and flak. Hundreds of anti-aircraft batteries opening fire. Black puffs filling the sky. 37mm, 88mm, 105mm. The B-17 formation begins its bomb run. Straight and level, bomb bay doors opening. 6 minutes. The bombers must fly straight and level for 6 minutes. No evasive action. The bombardiers need stable platforms to aim. 6 minutes exposed to flak. The Mustangs can do nothing about flak. They circle above the formation, watching for fighters. But the Luftwaffe has withdrawn. The German fighters are landing, refueling, rearming. The flak is intense. Wardell watches a B-17 take a direct hit. The right wing separates. The aircraft rolls inverted and falls. He counts parachutes. 3, 4, 5. Not enough. 10 men were on that bomber. Another B-17 is hit in the number 3 engine. Fire. The propeller windmills. The crew feathers it. The fire goes out. The bomber stays in formation on 3 engines. Wardell feels helpless. He can fight enemy fighters. He cannot fight flak. The seconds stretch. 4 minutes. 5 minutes. Then bombs away. The B-17S release. over 300,000 pounds of high explosive falling toward Berlin. The bombers rise as the weight drops. They begin turning, heading 270 west, home. The mission is accomplished. American bombers have struck Berlin in daylight, and American fighters escorted them all the way. But the mission is only half complete. Now they must return 600 miles to the English coast. Wardell's fuel, 315 gallons. At 65 gallons per hour cruise, that gives 4 hours, 50 minutes endurance. Return flight time, approximately 3 hours, 20 minutes. Margin, 90 minutes. Comfortable if nothing goes wrong. Major Vance's voice on the radio. All fighters free hunt authorized. Targets of opportunity, but watch your fuel state. Wardell looks down. Below, a Luftwaffe airfield. He can see aircraft parked in revetments. A target. He has ammunition remaining, 1,200 rounds. And he has margin. He makes a decision. Blue flight, follow me down. The dive is steep. Wardell rolls inverted and pulls. The nose drops toward the vertical. The airspeed builds rapidly. 300 miles per hour, 350, 400. At 5,000 feet, he rolls upright and pulls out. 4 Gs. The G-suit squeezes his legs. His vision grays at the edges. Level at 500 feet. Heading directly for the airfield. Speed 420 miles per hour. Anti-aircraft fire opens up. Tracers arcing toward him. He jinks. Left. Right. Not violent maneuvers, just enough to spoil the gunner's aim. The airfield rushes closer. He can see details now. Parked aircraft. Bf-109s, 3 of them lined up near a hangar. Wardell selects guns. He centers the gun sight on the lead 109. Range, 600 yards, 500, 400. He fires. All 6 guns hammering. The tracers stream forward. Strikes on the first 109. The fuel tank explodes. Fire blooms. Wardell walks the fire across the second aircraft. More hits. The canopy shatters. 3 seconds of firing. 240 rounds expended. Then he's past the airfield, pulling up, climbing, jinking. The flak follows him, but can't track fast enough. Behind him, Blue 2 and 3 make their runs. More aircraft burning. Blue 4 calls, "Blue leader, I'm hit. Oil pressure dropping." Wardell. Blue 4, what's your status? Oil pressure at 20. Engine temperature rising. I'm losing it. Head west. We'll stay with you. Blue 4 turns. His Merlin is trailing smoke. Not fire. Oil. Smoke. The engine is starving for lubrication. The formation climbs. Wardell throttles back, staying with the damaged aircraft. Blue 4. I'm not going to make it. Oil pressure 0. Temp red line, I'm seizing. Altitude? 8,000 feet. Bail out. We'll mark your position for rescue. Roger, bailing out. Wardell watches. The damaged Mustang's canopy jettisons. The pilot stands up in the slipstream. He falls clear. The parachute deploys. White canopy blossoming. The P-51 continues west for a few seconds. Then the engine seizes. The propeller stops. The aircraft noses over and dives into the ground. A fireball marks the impact. 1 pilot lost, but alive. A prisoner now, but alive. Wardell marks the position on his map. Blue flight continues west. 3 aircraft now instead of 4. The mathematics have changed again. Wardell's decision to strafe the airfield cost Blue 4 his aircraft. The flak damage was random, but the exposure was Wardell's choice. He makes a note. He will write the report. He will accept responsibility, but right now he has to get the rest of his flight home. The return flight tests endurance more than skill. Hours of straight and level flight. Hand flying. Constant monitoring. Wardell's body aches. His legs are cramped. His back hurts. The oxygen mask chafes his face. His eyes burn from squinting. But he forces concentration. Every gauge, every needle, every calculation. At 1100 hours, they cross the German border heading west. Fuel 220 gallons remaining. Distance to English coast 300 miles. Time required 90 minutes. Fuel needed 98 gallons. The margin exists, 122 gallons, nearly 2 hours. For the first time, Wardell allows himself to believe they will make it. The bomber stream is scattered now, aircraft returning individually or in small groups. Some are damaged, engines out, control surfaces shot away. They struggle west at reduced speed and altitude. The Mustangs stay high, watching for German fighters trying to pick off stragglers, but the Luftwaffe is absent. They expended their effort over Berlin. At 12:30, the Dutch coast appears ahead. The WWII, the North Sea beyond. Wardell crosses the coast at 15,000 feet. Enemy territory behind him. He allows himself to relax slightly. Not much, just enough to acknowledge that survival is probable now. At 13:45, the English coast appears. Land, friendly land. Wardell descends, 10,000 feet, 5,000. The air grows warmer. At 1400 hours, he sees Debden, the runway, home, final fuel check, main tanks, 4%, 18 gallons. He keys the radio. Debden Tower, Blue Leader, 3 ships, request landing clearance. Blue Leader, Debden Tower, cleared to land runway 27, wind 240 at 8 knots. Wardell enters the traffic pattern, downwind leg, base leg, final approach. The Mustang descends, he lowers the landing gear, 3 green lights, gear down and locked, flaps down, airspeed reducing, 140, 130, 120, the runway threshold passes beneath. He holds the nose up. The main wheels touch. A slight bounce, then firmly on the ground. He rolls out, applies brakes gently, turns off the runway onto the taxiway. At 14:53, Wardell shuts down the engine in his parking revetment. The propeller coasts to a stop. The Merlin ticks as it cools. Silence. He sits in the cockpit. His hands rest on the canopy rail. He doesn't move. Sergeant Browning appears. He climbs the wing. "Welcome back, sir. Fuel state?" Wardell looks at the gauge. 18 gallons. 18 gallons remaining, Sergeant. Browning does the math. At 65 gallons per hour, that's 16 minutes of endurance. "You cut it close, Captain." Wardell nods slowly. "Close enough." He unbuckles, climbs out of the cockpit. His legs barely support him. 10 hours in the seat. His body is stiff, exhausted. The other Mustangs are landing. Blue 2, Blue 3, across the field, other flights returning. But not all of them. Some aircraft missing, some pilots not coming home. Wardell walks toward the operations building. The debriefing will take an hour, then the mission report, then sleep. But first, he allows himself one moment. He turns, looks back at the P-51B, the aircraft that carried him to Berlin and back. The ground crew is already swarming over it, checking for damage, refueling, rearming. By tomorrow morning it will be ready to fly again, to do it all again, because this mission proved what needed to be proved. The Mustang can reach Berlin and return. The bomber crews will never fly alone again. March 7th, 1944. Wardell wakes in his bunk at 0700. 6 hours of sleep, not enough. But more than he expected. His body aches, shoulders, back, legs. 10 hours compressed into a cockpit leaves marks that won't fade for days. He dresses slowly, every movement deliberate. His hands are stiff. His neck is sore from the constant scanning left and right. Outside, the morning is grey. England in March. Always grey, always cold. He walks to the operations building. Other pilots are already there. Quiet conversations over coffee, cigarettes. The subdued atmosphere of men processing what happened yesterday. Men who survived when others didn't. Major Vance is at the map table. Red pins mark the route to Berlin and back, 1,150 miles. Blue pins mark aircraft losses. 3 blue pins on the return leg over Germany. 3 P-51s that didn't make it home, but yellow pins mark bomber losses. Only 4 yellow pins out of 120 bombers that flew. 4 bombers, 40 men. Vance sees Wardell, nods toward the map. Intelligence finished the analysis overnight. Previous Berlin raids without full escort averaged 26% losses. Yesterday, 3.3%. Wardell studies the numbers. The mathematics are stark and undeniable. 26% of 120 bombers equals 31 aircraft. 310 men killed or captured. Bodies falling through 30,000 feet of frozen air. Parachutes that don't open. Aircraft exploding. Crews burning. 3.3% equals 4 aircraft. 40 men lost instead of 310. The difference, 270 lives saved. Saved because fighters stayed with them all the way to target and back. Saved because the P-51 had the range to make it possible. Vance continues, his voice steady and professional. 8th Air Force Command issued new operational doctrine at 0500 this morning. All deep penetration missions will have mandatory P-51 escort from departure to target and return. No exceptions, no debate. Production status? Packard is increasing Merlin output. North American is ramping up airframe production to 500 P-51s per month. Every fighter group in the 8th Air Force transitions to Mustangs by August. Wardell absorbs this information. One successful mission has validated an entire program. Yesterday proved the concept works. Now the industrial machine responds with overwhelming force. 500 Mustangs per month. By summer, the 8th Air Force will have over 1,000 P-51s in theater. By fall, 1,500. The Luftwaffe will have nowhere to hide. Vance looks at each pilot in the room. You're all grounded today. Rest. Maintenance will prep your aircraft. Tomorrow we do it again. Frankfurt, same profile, same mission parameters. Wardell nods. He already knew this was coming. Yesterday was not about one heroic mission. Yesterday was about proving a system that must now be repeated. Again and again, every day, until the Luftwaffe cannot respond. Until German fighter losses exceed their ability to replace pilots and aircraft. This is attrition warfare in its purest form. And attrition warfare is won with mathematics and persistence, not individual acts of valor. The missions blur together through March and April. March 8th, Frankfurt, 60 P-51s escort 300 bombers. Bomber losses, 4.1%. German fighters intercept but break off early. They're learning that American escorts don't turn back anymore. March 15th, Stuttgart, 72 P-51s. Bomber losses, 3.8%. The Luftwaffe commits fewer aircraft. Their response is weakening. March 22nd, Berlin again, 96 P-51s. Bomber losses, 2.9%. Below 3% for the first time in the entire strategic bombing campaign. Wardell flies all 3 missions. Each one follows the same brutal pattern. Wake before dawn, pre-flight in darkness, takeoff, rendezvous with bombers, climb to altitude, cross into Germany, hours of cruise flight. Combat over the target. Return flight nursing fuel reserves. Land with minimal margin. 10 hours in the cockpit. Every mission, the same cold, the same fear, the same mathematics of fuel consumption, but also the same result. The bombers come home. On the March 22nd mission to Berlin, Wardell encounters German fighters for the second time over the capital. 6 Bf-109s attempt to intercept the bomber stream, but they're different now. The aggression is gone, replaced by caution. They make one diving pass, fire from long range, 700 yards, too far for accurate shooting, then they break off immediately when the Mustangs turn to engage. They're not trying to destroy bombers anymore, they're trying to survive, to preserve aircraft and pilots for battles they might actually win. Wardell shoots down one 109 in a brief engagement that lasts 90 seconds. The German pilot bails out over his own territory. He'll be back in a cockpit within a week if he's uninjured. But that's the point. Each mission depletes the Luftwaffe's pool of experienced pilots. Each loss cannot be fully replaced. The training pipeline is broken. New German pilots arrive at combat squadrons with less than 150 hours total flight time. Some with barely 100. They're flying against American pilots with 300 hours, 400 hours, combat veterans with 20 missions, 30 missions. Men who have fought their way to Berlin and back multiple times. Experience matters in air combat. Experience is the difference between reaction time and anticipation, between survival and death. The Germans are running out of experienced pilots faster than they can train new ones. The mathematics are brutal and inevitable. April brings a shift in understanding. Wardell has flown 16 combat missions by the end of the month, Berlin 5 times, other deep penetration targets across Germany. He has shot down 4 enemy aircraft confirmed, 2 probables, but the individual kills mean nothing to him now. What matters are the statistics compiled in the operations room. April 8th, Brunswick, bomber losses 2.7%. April the 24th, Munich, bomber losses 3.1%. April the 29th, Berlin, bomber losses 2.4%. The trend line drops steadily, month after month. The numbers don't lie, and on the German side, the losses mount catastrophically. Intelligence reports are clear and damning. The Luftwaffe lost 410 fighter pilots in April, killed in action, captured, or wounded severely enough to remove them from combat duty permanently. German training schools graduate 180 pilots per month. The mathematics are simple. Germany is losing 230 fighter pilots per month, more than they can replace. At that rate of attrition, the Luftwaffe will cease to exist as an effective fighting force within 6 months, not defeated in a single decisive battle, bled dry through unsustainable losses over time. Wardell understands his role now with absolute clarity. He is not a hero. He is an instrument of a system, a component in a machine designed to apply continuous pressure. The P-51 Mustang is the system. Range is the capability that enables everything else. Endurance is the strategy that destroys the enemy. Every mission flown denies the Germans the ability to choose when and where to fight. Before the Mustang, German fighters could wait until American escorts reached their fuel limits and turn back. Then they could attack vulnerable bombers with impunity. Now, the escorts never turn back. German fighters must engage American fighters over their own territory. They must climb to altitude, burning fuel. They must fight at a tactical disadvantage. And when damaged, they must land on airfields now within reach of strafing Mustangs on the return leg. There is no sanctuary, no safe period, no respite. This is how air superiority is achieved in modern warfare, not through spectacular victories in individual combat, through relentless pressure applied day after day, through showing up when the enemy expects you to quit, through staying when withdrawal seems inevitable. Wardell flies his missions. He does his job. He brings his aircraft home. He files reports. He sleeps. He wakes. He flies again. This is war. Not the dramatic version described in newspapers and radio broadcasts. The real version, repetitive, exhausting, mathematical, and devastatingly effective. By late May, the character of the missions changes noticeably. The bomber streams encounter diminishing resistance. German fighter attacks become sporadic and poorly coordinated. Sometimes entire missions proceed without enemy contact. The Luftwaffe is conserving strength, husbanding dwindling resources, pulling back from unwinnable fights, preparing for something larger. On June 1st, Major Vance calls a full group briefing. Every pilot in the 357th attends. The operations room is packed. Vance stands before a large map of France. The Normandy coastline is marked with red circles, beaches designated by code names: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword. Gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level. You will not discuss this information outside this room. You will not write about it in letters home. You will not mention it in conversation with anyone not present in this briefing. The room falls completely silent. Within the next week, Allied forces will invade German-occupied France. Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious operation in human history. Over 150,000 men in the first wave, 5,000 ships, 13,000 aircraft, airborne drops behind enemy lines, beach landings under fire. He pauses to let the magnitude sink in. Our mission is to ensure the Luftwaffe cannot interfere with the invasion. We will fly continuous air superiority patrols over the landing beaches. We will strafe German airfields to destroy aircraft on the ground. We will intercept any enemy aircraft that attempts to reach the invasion fleet. We will deny Germany the ability to attack our forces during the most vulnerable phase of the operation. Vance's voice hardens. Everything we have done since March has been preparation for this moment. The Luftwaffe has been weakened through sustained attrition. Their pilot strength is down 40% from January. Aircraft availability is critically low. They cannot mount sustained large-scale operations anymore, but they will try, and if they succeed in reaching the beaches during the landing phase, American soldiers will die. Thousands of them. Men wading through surf under machine gun fire. Men pinned down on beaches with nowhere to hide. He taps the map with his finger. We will not let German aircraft reach those beaches. The briefing continues for another hour. Patrol sectors, altitude assignments, communication protocols, fuel planning for extended loiter time over the combat zone. Wardell studies the maps. The logistics are staggering. The invasion will be the largest military operation ever attempted, and its success depends on Allied air superiority being absolute and uncontested. If the Luftwaffe breaks through, if German aircraft strafe the landing craft or bomb the beaches, the entire invasion could fail. The weight of that responsibility settles on every pilot in the room. June 5, 1944. The invasion is scheduled for dawn on June 6th, but the weather is marginal. Low clouds over the channel, high winds, rough seas that will make landing craft operations extremely difficult. Supreme Commander Eisenhower delays the invasion by 24 hours. The decision is agonizing but necessary. Troops remain loaded on ships, seasick, anxious, waiting. Paratroopers sit in their aircraft, equipment checked and rechecked, waiting. Fighter pilots stand by their aircraft, engines warmed and ready, waiting. Everyone waits. Wardell spends the afternoon of June 5th walking the perimeter of the airfield. His P-51 is fully prepared, fueled, armed, inspected. There is nothing left to do but wait. He thinks about the men on the ships. Infantry soldiers, most of them younger than him. Many of them have never seen combat. Tomorrow they will wade through the surf under direct fire from fortified German positions. They will cross beaches mined and wired and defended by machine guns. Many will die in the first minutes, before they reach cover, before they can fight back. His job seems abstract in comparison. Air superiority, what does that phrase mean to a rifleman pinned down on a beach? It means German aircraft cannot strafe the landing craft as they approach shore, cannot bomb the ships offshore, cannot provide reconnaissance to German artillery spotters who would rain fire on concentrations of troops. It means the soldiers on the beach fight only the enemy in front of them, not the enemy above them. That is worth something. That is worth everything he has done for the past 3 months. Wardell returns to the barracks as the sun sets. Tomorrow will begin before dawn. He needs rest. But sleep comes slowly. The anticipation is too great. The stakes too high. June 6th, 1944, D-Day. At 0430, the charge of quarters shakes Wardell awake. "Captain, it's happening. Invasion launched. Briefing in 30 minutes. Wardell dresses quickly in the darkness. The briefing room is already crowded when he arrives. Vance stands at the map. His expression is calm but intense. Airborne drops began at 0100 hours. Paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne are on the ground behind Utah Beach. British and Canadian airborne forces are east of the Orne River. Beach landings commence at 0630. He points to the map. Our first patrol launches at 0530. Blue flight, you have Omaha Beach. Station altitude 15,000 feet. 3-hour patrol duration. You are weapons-free on any German aircraft. No restrictions, no warnings. Anything with a black cross gets shot down. Intelligence estimates the Luftwaffe will attempt to commit everything they have left. Expect heavy resistance initially. But remember, they're operating from damaged airfields with depleted squadrons and inexperienced pilots. You have every advantage. Vance looks directly at Wardell. Bring them home, Captain, and keep our boys on the beach alive. Wardell and Blue Flight take off at 0528. Still dark. The 4 Mustangs climb east toward France. At 0600, the sun breaks the horizon. Below, the English Channel is filled with ships. Wardell has never seen so many vessels in one place. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, transport ships, landing craft by the hundreds, perhaps thousands. The invasion armada stretches from horizon to horizon. At 0630, he reaches his assigned patrol station over Omaha Beach. 15,000 feet, clear visibility. Below, the landing craft are approaching the shore. Small boats filled with men. He can see the surf breaking, the obstacles in the water, the steep bluffs rising from the beach, the German fortifications on the high ground. Tracer fire begins arcing from the German positions. Red lines cutting through the dawn. The boats keep coming. Men are dying down there. Wardell can see it happening in real time. Boats hit by artillery. Men falling in the water. Bodies floating. But the sky above is empty. No German aircraft. Wardell circles his patrol sector. Scanning, waiting. His hands are steady on the controls. He is ready to engage. But there is nothing to engage. 0700. Still nothing. 0730. The sky remains clear. At 0815, his radio crackles with urgency. Blue Leader, this is Crossbow Control. We have bandits inbound your sector. 4 FW190s, Vector 090, Angels 12,000. Finally, contact. Blue Leader copies, intercepting. Wardell turns east, descends to 12,000 feet. Blue Flight follows in combat spread formation. There, 4 Focke-Wulf 190s, flying low and fast, heading directly for the beaches. Wardell positions above and behind them. The Germans haven't detected the Mustangs yet. Their attention is focused ahead on the invasion fleet. He rolls inverted and pulls the nose down, the familiar sensation of the dive. Airspeed building, 300 miles per hour, 350, 400. At 1,000 feet behind the trailing FW190, he rolls upright and levels out. The German pilot finally sees him, banks hard left in a desperate defensive break. Too late. Wardell fires a 3-second burst. The 650 caliber guns hammer. The 190's tail section disintegrates. The aircraft snaps into an uncontrolled spin and impacts the water in a massive spray. The remaining 3 Germans scatter. One turns directly toward Wardell. Head-on engagement. Both pilots commit. Closure rate over 600 miles per hour. Wardell fires. The German fires. Tracers fill the space between them. He feels impacts, metal tearing somewhere in his airframe. But he holds the trigger down. The FW190 flashes past. Wardell reverses hard, 6G turn. The G-suit inflates painfully around his legs. The German is climbing, trying to gain altitude advantage. but the Merlin pulls strong. Wardell is gaining on him. At 8,000 feet, the German levels out and attempts to run, but the P-51 is faster in level flight. Wardell closes to 300 yards. 250, 200, he fires. Short burst. Accurate. The 190's engine erupts in flames and black smoke. The canopy jettisons. The pilot bails out. Parachute deploys. Wardell doesn't watch. He's already scanning for the other two Germans. Gone. Retreating east. Not willing to press the attack against alerted fighters. Total engagement time, 3 minutes 40 seconds. He climbs back to patrol altitude. Checks his aircraft for damage. Holes in the left wing. Control response is normal. All engine instruments in the green. Oil pressure steady. Coolant temperature normal. He can continue the mission. He resumes patrol over Omaha Beach. For the next 2 hours, no other German aircraft appear. The sky belongs to the Allies. At 1100 hours, a fresh patrol relieves him. He returns to Debden. Lands, refuels, rearms. The ground crew patches the holes in his wing with aluminum patches and speed tape. At 13:30 he launches again. Second patrol of the day. Same sector, same mission. Again, minimal German resistance. 4 aircraft attempt to reach the beaches. All 4 are intercepted and shot down before they get within 5 miles of the fleet. By 1800 hours, Wardell has flown 3 patrols. 10 hours total flight time. 2 confirmed kills, 1 probable, but the individual statistics are meaningless. What matters is the aggregate result across all 5 beaches. Allied aircraft fly 14,674 sorties on June 6th. German aircraft fly 319 sorties. The ratio is 46-1. Air superiority is not contested. It is absolute. Overwhelming. Total. German ground forces fight without air support, without aerial reconnaissance, without resupply from the air, without hope of relief. The invasion succeeds because the Luftwaffe cannot interfere. And the Luftwaffe cannot interfere because 3 months of P-51 escort missions destroyed their ability to sustain large-scale operations. March to June, 90 days of attrition. 90 days of bomber escorts penetrating deep into Germany. 90 days of forcing the Luftwaffe to fight defensive battles over their own territory. 90 days of unsustainable losses. The mathematics worked exactly as predicted. The war in Europe continues for 11 more months, but the outcome is no longer in doubt. Wardell flies through the summer and fall of 1944, through the winter, into the spring of 1945. He flies 127 combat missions total. He accumulates 890 flight hours in the P-51 Mustang. He is promoted to Major, awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters. His final combat mission is April 27, 1945. A fighter sweep over Bavaria, no enemy contact. German airfields are abandoned. Aircraft destroyed on the ground by their own retreating crews. Fuel exhausted. Pilots dead or captured. The Luftwaffe has ceased to exist as an effective fighting force. On May the 8th, Germany surrenders unconditionally. Wardell returns to the United States in June. He is 27 years old. He has survived when many others did not. He does not feel like a hero. He feels like someone who did a job and was fortunate enough to come home. He returns to Montana, to his father's ranch, to a life that seems impossibly quiet after years of Merlin engines and combat. He tries to forget, and mostly he succeeds. June 1950, North Korea invades South Korea. The fragile peace shatters. The United States responds with military force. The military recalls experienced pilots from the reserves. Wardell is 32 years old, married now, working as an aeronautical engineer, building a civilian life. He receives orders to report for active duty within 30 days. The aircraft he will fly, F-51 Mustang, the same aircraft he flew 6 years ago. Redesignated F for fighter instead of P for pursuit, but mechanically identical. The same Packard Merlin engine, the same laminar flow wing, the same 650 caliber guns. He reports to a base in Japan for refresher training. The transition is brief. He knows the aircraft better than the instructors teaching the course, but the mission profile is completely different. In Korea, jet aircraft dominate air-to-air combat. The Soviet-built MiG-15 is faster than any propeller-driven fighter. The F-51 cannot compete against jets in aerial combat, but the Mustang retains one critical advantage: endurance. The F-51 can loiter over the battlefield for hours, carry heavy loads of rockets and bombs, operate from rough forward airstrips that would destroy jet aircraft, provide close air support to ground troops in sustained operations. Wardell flies ground attack missions, low altitude, high risk, flak and small arms fire from every direction. The liquid-cooled engine is vulnerable. One bullet through the glycol cooling system means engine failure within minutes. Many F-51s are lost to ground fire, but mission success rates remain high. On September 15, 1950, Wardell flies a mission near Incheon that will fundamentally change his relationship with the aircraft he thought he understood completely. A Marine battalion is surrounded by North Korean forces, outnumbered 3-1, taking heavy casualties, calling desperately for air support. Wardell leads a flight of 4 F-51s armed with napalm canisters, high explosive bombs and rockets. The weather is terrible. Low clouds, driving rain, visibility under 2 miles. Other aircraft have already turned back. The conditions are too dangerous, but the Marines on the ground don't have the option to turn back. Wardell presses through. He finds the target area by following radio directions from a forward air controller on the ground with the Marines. The enemy positions are dug in on 3 sides of the Marine perimeter. Heavy automatic weapons fire, mortars. The Marines are pinned down and running out of ammunition. Wardell makes 6 attack runs through intense ground fire. First run, napalm on the northern enemy position. The jellied gasoline ignites and spreads. Screams on the radio. Men burning. Second run, rockets on machine gun positions to the east. Direct hits. The guns go silent. Third run, high explosive bombs on the western flank. The explosions tear gaps in the enemy line. Fourth run, strafing pass with 50 caliber guns. Tracers walking through enemy infantry attempting to advance. On the 4th run, his aircraft is hit. Oil pressure begins dropping. Temperature begins climbing. He's losing oil through a punctured line. 5th run, he makes it anyway. More rockets, more destruction of enemy positions. 6th run, the engine is overheating badly now. Temperature gauge in the red. Oil pressure at 20% and falling. He makes one final strafing pass, expends his remaining ammunition, then he turns for base. The engine is dying, knocking, missing, temperature critical. He nurses the crippled aircraft for 30 miles, reducing power, leaning the mixture, trying to stretch the dying engine as far as possible. At 5 miles from the nearest friendly airfield, the engine seizes. The propeller stops turning. He is a glider with no altitude and no options. He crash lands in a rice paddy. The aircraft is destroyed. The airframe breaks apart on impact. Wardell walks away with a dislocated shoulder and multiple contusions. Nothing worse. The Marines break out of the encirclement. 230 men survive who would have died without air support. 3 months later, Wardell receives the Medal of Honor for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his own life above and beyond the call of duty. He accepts the medal at a ceremony in Washington, says the appropriate words, shakes hands with the president. But privately, the medal feels wrong. He was doing the same thing he always did. The mission required staying. The aircraft allowed him to stay. So he stayed. The F-51 Mustang gave him the capability to complete the mission despite damage. That's what the aircraft was designed to do, stay in the fight longer than anyone expects. Wardell retires from the Air Force in 1953 at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. He is 35 years old. He has survived 2 wars. He returns to Montana permanently, marries a schoolteacher named Catherine. They have 3 children. He works as an aeronautical engineer for Boeing, designs components for the new generation of jet fighters, F-86 Sabre, F-100 Super Sabre, F-4 Phantom. He never talks about the war. His wife asks him about it once early in their marriage. What was it like? Flying combat? He considers the question carefully before answering. Long. Mostly it was just long and cold. Hours of flying with nothing happening, then a few minutes where everything happened at once. She waits for more, but he doesn't elaborate. She never asks again. His children know their father was a fighter pilot. They know he flew in World War II and Korea. They don't know details. They don't ask. And he doesn't volunteer information. This is common among men of his generation, the ones who fought. They returned home. They worked. They built families and careers and communities. They did not dwell on the past. The past was necessary, but it was finished. The war was filed away. A chapter closed. 1975. Wardell is 57 years old. His children are grown. His career at Boeing is winding down toward retirement. His wife, Catherine, suggests a trip. There's an air show in California next month, the Confederate Air Force. They have restored warbirds. I saw in the newspaper they have a P-51 Mustang. He hasn't seen a Mustang in over 20 years. He agrees to go. The air show is held at a small airport outside San Diego. Thousands of people, families, children, veterans wearing old unit insignia on baseball caps. The restored aircraft sit on the flight line. B-17 Flying Fortress, B-24 Liberator, P-47 Thunderbolt. And there at the end of the line a P-51D Mustang, polished aluminum skin gleaming in the California sun, bubble canopy, 4-bladed propeller. The aircraft looks exactly as he remembers, sleek, purposeful, deadly. He approaches slowly. Other people are clustered around it, taking photographs, reading the information placard. He waits until they move on, then he steps closer. The laminar flow wing. He runs his hand along the leading edge. The metal is smooth. No rivets protruding, just pure aerodynamic efficiency. He walks around the aircraft, the same walk-around inspection he performed 127 times before combat missions. Landing gear, tires, brake lines, propeller blades, exhaust stacks, coolant scoop, gun ports. Everything is correct. Everything is as it should be. A young man in a flight suit approaches, the aircraft's owner. She's beautiful, isn't she? Fully restored. Took us 4 years. Flies like she just came off the production line. Wardell nods. Would you like to sit in the cockpit? He hesitates for only a moment. Yes. He climbs the wing route. The step is exactly where his foot remembers it should be. He slides into the cockpit. The seat fits him perfectly. His hands move to the controls automatically. Left hand on the throttle, right hand on the stick, feet on the rudder pedals. The instrument panel is dark, but every dial is exactly where it was 30 years ago. Airspeed indicator, altimeter, attitude indicator, manifold pressure gauge, tachometer, fuel quantity, oil pressure, coolant temperature. He could start this engine right now, in his sleep, without thinking. The young owner is watching from the wing. Did you fly in the war? Yes. What did you fly? P-51B, later P-51D, 8th Air Force, England. The young man's eyes widen with recognition and respect. Bomber escort? Yes. Did you fly to Berlin? 5 times. A pause. The young man is processing this. He's talking to someone who actually did it, who flew the missions, who risked everything. What was it like? Wardell looks at the instrument panel, at the throttle under his hand, at the gun sight above the cowling. How do you compress 10 hours in a cockpit into words that make sense to someone who wasn't there? How do you explain the mathematics of fuel consumption at 25,000 feet? The fear that comes from knowing you're 600 miles from safety and the fuel gauge is dropping. The weight of knowing bomber crews are counting on you to stay when every instinct screams to turn back. He settles for the truth. It wasn't about courage, it was about showing up. The bombers needed escorts. "We had the range, so we went," the young man nods slowly. "Were you scared?" Wardell meets his eyes. Every single time, from engine start to shutdown, 10 hours of being scared. But more scared of letting them down than of dying. He touches the throttle again. Memories flood back. Not the dramatic moments, the quiet ones. The sound of the Merlin at cruise power. The endless scanning of empty sky. The mental arithmetic of fuel remaining versus distance to go. The young owner asks one more question. What made the Mustang special? Why did it change the war? Wardell thinks carefully before answering. Other fighters were faster, more heavily armed, more rugged, but this aircraft could stay. It could fly from England to Berlin and back. 1,600 miles, 10 hours. That changed everything. How? Before the Mustang, German fighters waited until our escorts ran out of fuel and turned back. Then they attacked the bombers. After the Mustang, we never turned back. They had to fight us over their own territory. They lost pilots faster than they could train new ones. In 6 months, they couldn't contest the air anymore. He pauses. It wasn't one big victory. It was showing up every day, staying when they expected us to quit. That's what broke them. Wardell climbs out of the cockpit. His movements are slower now, stiffer. Age and time have taken their toll. On the ground, he turns back to look at the aircraft one final time. The young owner extends his hand. "Thank you for your service, sir." Wardell shakes his hand. The phrase is well-meaning, respectful. But it doesn't capture the full truth. He did not serve alone. He thinks of Sergeant Browning, the crew chief who maintained the Merlin engine through 127 missions, who kept the aircraft flying when other planes were grounded for maintenance. He thinks of Major Vance, the squadron commander who trusted the fuel calculations and sent them to Berlin when everyone said it was impossible. He thinks of the bomber crews, the men who flew straight and level through flak because someone finally stayed with them all the way. And he thinks of the men who didn't come home. Lieutenant Morrison, engine failure over France, June 8, 1944. His name is carved on a memorial wall in Cambridge, England. Captain Hayes, no relation despite the shared surname. Shot down over the North Sea, November 2nd, 1944. Body, never recovered. Lieutenant Kowalski, hit by flak over Berlin, March 22nd, 1944. Bailed out, became a prisoner of war, survived the camps, died in a car accident in Cleveland in 1952. Blue 4, first name Robert, last name forgotten now after 30 years. Shot down on the first Berlin mission, the one Wardell ordered to strafe the airfield. His decision. His responsibility. 18 men from the 357th Fighter Group killed in action between March and May of 1944. They paid the price for the 3.3% bomber loss rate, for the air superiority on D-Day, for the victory. Wardell walks back to where Catherine is waiting near the car. How was it? Like visiting old friends. They drive back to the hotel. That night, Wardell sleeps deeply. No dreams, no nightmares. Just the sleep of a man at peace with his past. The next morning, he wakes at dawn out of habit, developed 50 years ago. He stands on the hotel balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over California. Somewhere, a restored Mustang will fly today. The Merlin's distinctive sound will carry across the sky. People will watch, children will point, veterans will remember. The P-51 still flies. 31 years after the first combat mission. Still proving what it proved in 1944. that wars are not won by the strongest weapon, they are won by the weapon that can stay. Wardell finishes his coffee, goes inside. The day is beginning. He has work to do, designs to complete, a life to live. The past is honored, but not dwelled upon. He showed up, he stayed, he did the work. That's enough.